My best friend caught that bullshit zombie virus. I think I helped her spread it across the state. Tammy and I had been joking about the virus for a week. We live in a small town and our journalists get bored. They interview anyone they can. So when a woman ate some dude's heart out and another woman cut her boyfriend's finger off, the news was all over it. It was clear from the beginning they didn't have many answers. No autopsy reports were released to the public. No explanation as to why the events had happened. No explanation, that is, except for the shit our town's tiny members came up with. I swear to God this sounds just like zombie virus that I worked with back in the 60s, old Miss Fritz cried out in the microphone. I don't know how, and I don't know the local news team tracked her down, but they did. Miss Fritz is always going on about the shit she did in the 60s. Working with a zombie virus is nothing new. A tan Toyota Camry blew past us, very clearly running the red light and nearly plowing the side of several cars. I rolled my eyes from the passenger seat and stretched my arms out. I waved them up and down stiffly, turning my head towards Tammy. "Oh no, it must be the zombie virus," I growled. Tammy whooped with laughter and slammed her palms against the steering wheel as we, legally, went through the light. Alright, but on a serious note, non-batshit crazy note, we're supposed to turn in about a mile to drop those groceries off. I was Tammy's faithful navigator. I went with her on most food deliveries she picked up, unless I was out doing my own. She claimed I kept her from getting lost and getting kidnapped. Whatever positive thing she thought worked for me. I was hopelessly in love with my best friend. Left or right? Tammy's voice cracked a bit, and I could tell she was about to spiral into panic mode. She didn't do well driving, or navigating, or talking to strangers. All things required to work for Hubgrub. It's going to be on the left, and it's going to be okay. Okay? I soothed. I reached a hand over the space between us, squeezing her arm gently before pulling away. We will get in, get out. I'll even help you talk to the lady and drop the food off, okay? She nodded. Her face was more tense than when we started this trip, and her knuckles were stark white, but she put her turn signal on and turned where we should. I tried to smile at her, help her as much as I could. I'll drive after this. You still raking the tips, but you don't have to drive anymore. I got you. I promise. She relaxed visibly. I knew she was stressed out because this was the first grocery shopping assignment we'd received from Hubgrub. Apparently, they had teamed up with the local supermarkets to help families get fast food and groceries to their front steps without having to lift more than a finger. I directed her to the lady's house, Bandy W, and told her when to park. Down past Bandy's house, we could see that some kind of craziness was going down. A car was wrapped around a tree, and people were running around the front yard like lunatics. I could have sworn the car wrapped around the tree was none other than that tan Camry that had blown past us. I tried to joke with Tammy about the virus again. Can we just get this done? She ignored my joke. I could see the stress in her face. I worried we were headed straight to Panic Town again. Pop the trunk. Get the groceries. I'll talk to Bandy, I said. Tammy hadn't released her grip on the wheel by the time I reached Bandy's front door, but I figured I could talk long enough to give her some time. I knew she needed it. I tapped on the glass screen door, peeking inside just a little bit. There were oodles of toddlers traipsing around this lady's foyer, and I mean oodles. I counted at least 9 crotch goblins wobbling around. They were drooling over various soft toys and staring at me with an intensity I didn't like one bit. That was one pro to being a child-free lesbian, I thought. There's even less of a chance I'll end up with this many soul-sucking crawlers around. The baby's attention refocused to something else in the house, and I figured Mama Bandy was on the way. I plastered a smile on my face and glanced behind me quickly. Tammy was finally shakily climbing out of the car and getting the groceries from the back. Bandy came to the door a second later, looking every bit like the mother of 9 children would. I didn't even blame her for ordering groceries online. How do you pack that many heathens into the van and go? How do you even leave, actually? Hi, ma'am. Bandy? I said as she popped open the glass door. Several of the drooling monsters rose from the floor and tumbled towards the sunshine. Yes, she confirmed. I held up Tammy's smartphone. telling her it was our first time delivering groceries, but we knew she needed to sign the dotted line. While she did so, a particularly odd-looking Rugrat stepped onto the porch with her mom. He was drooling hard and his eyes were glazed, unfocused. He looked like he might have had a fever of some sort. "I'll go help bring the rest in," I told Bandy, barely escaping the reaching, sickly grasp of wobbly toddlers as I bounded off the front stoop and headed toward the car. Tammy struggled the amount of groceries she had on her own arms. I watched as she walked a little cockeyed to the front door, grinning at Bandy in that nervous way she grins at all strangers. Bandy started taking bags from Tammy, and as I grabbed the remaining groceries and slammed the trunk, I watched as a sickly toddler grabbed hold of Tammy's bare leg. Tammy wasn't nearly the dick I was when it came to kids. She peered down at the young'un with genuine, sparkling attention. She even bent down a little to talk to the boy, once Bandy had removed enough of the grocery load. Just as I came up behind Tammy with the last of the bags, the boy looked up into Tammy's looming face and sneezed. I recoiled automatically, accidentally letting slip a "gross." Bandy sent me a scathing look, and I worried for Tammy's review. Tammy, ever the professional, albeit nervous as fuck, individual that she was, simply laughed and wiped a hand across her face. I loved her laugh. Even the super fake, baby just sneezed in my eye laugh. Bandy relaxed a little and took the groceries from my hands. Her and Tammy exchanged pleasantries for a minute as I went back to the car, waiting for the driver's side door. Tammy seemed to be genuinely enjoying interacting with the customer for once. The little boy still had his little boy talon dug into her calf, but she really didn't seem to mind. Finally, Tammy and Bandy stopped talking. Tammy walked back towards the car with a distracted look on her face. She paused in front of me, looking confused. "Ready to go?" I asked. Tammy was so close to me, I could smell the perfume she used daily. Daisy something or other. My heart skipped a beat. "I'll drive," Tammy said. She almost didn't sound like herself. "I thought I was going to drive. Help you out?" I asked. Instead of responding, Tammy simply shoved past me and hopped in the driver's seat, nipping my heels at the door when she popped it open. "Hey!" I protested. I figured the stress must just have overwhelmed her, so I ran the passenger side and got in, not saying much else. Her smartphone dinged in my hand, signaling to us that now that we had dropped the delivery off, we were ready for our next one. Now we're gonna go pick up a $40 pizza order for some dude named Joe. Head up to Max. You know the way," I instructed Tammy gently. She again didn't respond. Instead, she peeled out of the driveway like a fucking lunatic. "What the fuck?" I shouted, gripping the oh shit handle just in case. Tammy wasn't the best driver. She surely never treated the road or someone's driveway like the NASCAR track. I watched as Tammy's face paled. Her mouth twisted up in a gruesome grin, completely unlike any face I'd ever seen her make. She wrenched the volume knob to way above any limit she'd usually let her sound system go. I was floored as she, floored it. I looked behind us and saw the Toyota smoking around the tree. Bandy didn't seem bothered by Tammy's actions. I didn't see a single other neighbor on the street to complain. Tammy ignored every direction I gave her. She ignored every question I had, ignored every expletive I screeched when she took the millionth turn to sharp, ignored the crossing pedestrians and ran lights. It was almost like Tammy wasn't there at all. I considered calling someone. Maybe she was suffering a total break from the reality. I realized, though, that I could rather die in a fiery car crash than betray the trust of my friend. Eventually, I just let her drive. I didn't interrupt, didn't squeak in fear, didn't even close my eyes. I watched her as openly as I watched the road. She was never once asked me in her adorable, nervous way, what the fuck was I staring at? I should have been shocked when she pulled up to the airport. It was a holiday weekend. Cars were everywhere, people honking and screaming from their windows. I should have been surprised because the airport was the last place Tammy would have been caught dead, no matter the money or the cause. But Tammy wasn't acting like Tammy. She roared into a spot reserved for Ubers and hopped out, leaving her keys in the ignition. I scrambled to turn the car off, grabbed her phone, and locked the doors before I lost her in the crowd. We already had several people squalling at us for taking up a reserved spot. I threw on my most charming, apologetic smile and ducked after Tammy. She was pushing her way through the crowd. People seemed to be mainly trying to get into the airport, not leave it, and there was a clusterfuck at the doors. Tammy was shoulder-checking people and forcing her tiny body through the masses. I followed as politely as I could, with as little shoving as I could get away with, my face burning the fuck up with embarrassment. Tammy stopped when she reached the center of the airport. The center. There were hundreds of people racing to get to the elevators, escalators, ticket counters, and their terminals. By the time I reached her in the throng of people, I had witnessed her be nearly trampled several times. I gripped Shammy's shoulder and spun her towards me. I was out of breath and sweating. Fuck, was there a lot of people here? What the fuck are you doing? I gasped. It was then I saw her eyes. Tammy was completely gone. There was nothing human left in her tiny glance she passed over my face. I searched her for a sign of illness. Sweating, drooling, clammy skin, anything to explain why the fuck she was acting the way she was. I saw nothing. Tammy, or the shell of Tammy, or whatever the fuck that was, wrenched away from my grasp and walked deeper into the crowd of people. I lost sight of her for a moment, maybe two. A wispy cloud of red, thickened quickly by streams of gore, exploded into the air, followed by the screams of too many people to imagine. I started elbowing my way through the crowd. A feeling in my gut told me the wave of intestines that had popped into the air of unsuspecting travelers belonged to the love of my life. A feeling I desperately wanted to ignore. The scream of passengers became overwhelming as I delved into the crowd. I didn't even have to rudely shove people out of the way for very long. The people were parting like the Red Sea. A circle of people with their phones out, recording, remained around the source of blood and guts. I pushed past a particularly paunchy woman with a brick for a phone, snapping grainy pictures and mumbling nonsense endlessly. A glance at her fuzzy screen confirmed my horrible feelings. The screen showed a flowered red dress in shreds, filled with gore and blood. Tammy had been wearing her favorite red sundress. I wish I hadn't looked past the woman's cell phone. I wish I could forget what I saw. I wish I knew exactly what it meant. Tammy, what remained of her anyway, lay at my feet. Veins had fired out in jagged patterns against the floor and the feet of the people recording. Tendons had exploded against the white tile, turning the airport floor a murky brown/red. Strings of long blonde hair, dyed a dingy copper by blood, had flown into every crevice possible. I watched as a sobering child clinging to her mother's leg pulled Tammy's hair from between her toes in clumps. As I screamed over the lumpy remains of my best friend, I couldn't help but think back on Miss Fritz's interview with the local news channel. They attacked populated areas. Then they spread it. Sometimes they explode.